Hi, and welcome to the Pink Movement podcast with your host, Christy Collier. Each episode, you'll hear from some awesome people in and around the breast cancer world, sharing their wisdom on all things health and well-being. You'll hear simple information, practical advice, and useful tips to help you stress less, move more, and feel better.
Welcome to the Pink Movement podcast. I'm your host, Christy Collier. First of all, a very quick shout out to our first two patrons of the Pink Movement podcast, Deb Ferguson and Nicola Green. Ladies, thank you so much for your generosity and support. It is greatly appreciated. And remember, if you'd like to support the production of this podcast, you can do that by becoming a patron, and you can find all the details for that on the website. Also, don't forget to check out the show notes of this episode today and all the previous episodes. There's lots of information in there on all the topics we've spoken about, and lots of links to videos and other bits and pieces. So definitely go on and have a look. All available at thepinkmovement.com.au. Okay, today's episode. I am talking with Donna Gianniotis, a Sacred Esoteric Healing Practitioner and a breast cancer survivor. Now, Donna's personal story is really interesting. Follow her breast cancer diagnosis, she undertook a search for answers and really found them in esoteric healing. Donna now puts quality at the forefront of everything she does, and she credits this and her learning of esoteric healing to her increased well-being, her health, energy, and vitality. Donna shares with us in this episode exactly what sacred esoteric healing is, how it can help us through chemotherapy and radiotherapy by improving energy levels, supporting our organs to rebalance, and basically helping us heal. Now, total truth, I had almost no idea what sacred esoteric healing was before chatting to Donna. But now I do. I am absolutely fascinated, and I honestly wish I'd have known about this when I was originally diagnosed, because it's something I would have definitely taken the time out to do. But it's never too late. You listen to Donna today and you'll learn that sacred esoteric healing can be done at any stage in our lives, and we can reap the benefits for it. So I hope you find today's episode as interesting and as intriguing as I have. So please enjoy. Donna Gianniotis has been working in the health arena teaching yoga and meditation for over 15 years. Over the past 5 years, Donna has also become an esoteric therapies practitioner. With a diagnosis of breast cancer in 2008 at the age of 33, and having at that stage taught yoga for many years, Donna queried how she ended up with a cancerous tumour at such a young age. She believed there must be more to health and well-being than simply diet and exercise. Her studies of the esoteric therapies gave her the answers that she was looking for, and have since supported her to understand that it is not only what we do, but the quality of how we live that truly matters. With the support of these modalities, she has learned how to choose a different way of living, a way that is about true self-nurturing and which supports and honours herself as a woman. Donna now shares these understandings in her sessions, classes, and workshops, supporting others to reconnect back to their body and their being through esoteric healing, esoteric connective tissue, yoga, meditation, massage, and cancer support sessions. Wow, what an intro, Donna. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today on the Pink Movement podcast.
Hi, Christy. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here today.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine and ours for our listeners. I suppose, Donna, you've got a really interesting story. So we might actually start with that, which is about receiving a breast cancer diagnosis for you back in 2008 at the age of 33, obviously very, very young. So talk us through a bit about that and how that eventuated and what happened after that.
Yeah, look, it was really interesting, Christy, because I was, as you said in my bio, I'd been teaching and practicing yoga for many years at that point, and I was living what I thought was a really healthy lifestyle, in the way I ate. I exercised, meditated every day, did yoga. So it was a real shock when I was diagnosed, and I think all my friends at the time also, everyone was just shocked because they're like, "You're the healthiest person we know."
Unfortunately, it doesn't discriminate, does it?
Exactly. So that, it came as quite a shock, and then, but it was interesting because when I was diagnosed, I knew that there was more for me to understand. Having, I guess, have a quite a relationship with my body through yoga. I knew that there was more than just the diagnosis. In my whole being, I knew that it hadn't just happened. That there was more for me to understand. Yeah, so upon the diagnosis, I wanted to look into why I'd actually got the cancer, and that led me on a particular journey to, I guess, a self-discovery on a deeper level, to understand more about myself and the way I'd been living, and certain lifestyle choices that I thought were good but perhaps weren't as great as what they could have been, to understand, I guess, a particular way of living.
So back when you were diagnosed, Donna, at the age of 33, I suppose immediately after that, what happened with you? Did you go through the stage of surgery? Did you have chemotherapy? Any other treatments?
Yeah, look, I first of all had surgery. So at the time, I was actually working up on Hayman Island as a yoga teacher. So that was my dream job. So to actually leave that was quite difficult. So it took a couple of weeks for me to actually decide to go back home to my mum and dad, and allow them to support me and to help me. And I had surgery and I had a lumpectomy. And then after I had the lumpectomy, I actually went through IVF and froze eggs.
Okay.
That was recommended at the time. I didn't have any children, and potentially wanted to have children, so I went through the IVF process. And then after that, I pretty much started chemo a couple of weeks, so I think it was only a week after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had about 6 months of chemo, and then after the chemo, I had the radiation and then the hormone therapy.
So the works.
The works, yeah.
Absolutely. And so you're obviously finished all of your treatments and surgeries and whatnot now.
Yeah, it's nearly 10. Well, next year will be 10 years since my diagnosis.
Wow, yeah.
So it goes so quick.
Yeah.
Feels like it was another lifetime. It's quite incredible because my level of health and well-being now is just far exceeds anything that I was before the cancer, which is quite interesting because before the cancer I thought I was really well and thought that the way I felt couldn't have gotten better. And then it was interesting because I had this whole thing about having chemotherapy. I thought that I'd never be as well as what I was before the chemo. And interesting now, I'm just so much better. I've got so much more vitality, and my health is the best it's ever been. So,
isn't that interesting that it's, in a funny way, a cancer diagnosis has led you to being on this, extremely healthy and a health and wellness path, I suppose.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I guess I was on a health and wellness path before, but the diagnosis of the breast cancer allowed me to have a look at that and to see where the holes were in that. And what I've discovered since then is it very much comes down to not what you do, but how you do it, and the quality in which you do things matters most of all. So I might have had certain things that I did that ticked the boxes, like did my yoga practice, meditated, ate well, all those sorts of things. But I wasn't aware at the time that the quality that I was doing those things in was not one of true connection.
Right.
And so, I might get on my yoga mat or meditate or whatever, but I might rush to get there, do my practice, and then the rest of the time rush around and do everything else. So I wasn't aware of how I was with myself in all of the other moments in my day.
Right.
And I guess since the breast cancer, I really learned how to reconnect truly back to my body, and then how to take that connection into everything that I do so that I'm nurturing myself all of the time. And what's interesting is that that connection back to self has given me so much more energy and vitality, that's where the true wellness comes from, within, as opposed to looking for, those things outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel better.
Mm. Wow, it's really interesting, and I can't wait till we sort of delve into this a bit more. But hearing it's not necessarily what we're doing, and often, as you say, if we tick the boxes. I've meditated for my 10 minutes today, and I've been out for my 15-minute walk, and I've done some mindfulness practice, but the rest of the time we are running around like crazy.
And as women, we're so good at ticking boxes. It's we're awesome at it, but, ticking boxes is a particular quality that keeps us disconnected from really listening to our body to go, actually, what does my body want to do right now? So we might be actually feeling really super exhausted or tired, and rather than just take a 10-minute rest or sit down or have a cup of tea, we continue to push ourselves to do whatever it is that needs doing, and we keep doing that at the expense of really listening to where our body's at.
Yeah, and look, it's, I don't want to stereotype, but it is a bit of a woman thing, isn't it? Where we go, it's fine, just push on and just do it. You'll be fine. Just get that done, tick that box, do that thing, and move on. But it isn't necessarily what's best for us.
Exactly. And I think, going through chemo was, people say that cancer is their greatest teacher. For me, I think actually going through chemotherapy was my greatest teacher, because going through chemo, I learnt about energy, which I hadn't really paid too much attention to before. And as many of, the listeners would know who've been through chemotherapy or going through it, it's, you can be super, super exhausted going through chemotherapy. And what I found is the way I was being with myself, in terms of, rushing to do this or that, even, just the haphazardness of my movements. I was exhausted just trying to cook dinner. And I actually remember being in the kitchen one day going, oh, wow, I was like fussing around the kitchen, and I just stopped and connected to my body, and I was like, okay, let's do this really super slow and really gently. And then I found that actually changing my movements and the quality in how I moved supported me then not to drain my energy. And then I sort of took that on board through the chemotherapy of actually going, oh, actually, if I'm more connected, if I'm with myself in what I do, and I do things in a way that's very gentle and very deliberate, then I wasn't exhausting myself. And I found that was quite incredible, learning that through chemotherapy. And then what was interesting at the end of the chemotherapy, I found myself going, oh, I'm better now. And I kind of started to go back to my old way. And then I went, hang on, let's put a full stop here. This hasn't helped me so far. Yeah. So I got very, very diligent and made a very deliberate choice that I wanted to continue to live in a way where I was really connected with myself and with my body as much as I could in everything that I did. And that has since, I've been practicing that, I guess, for nearly, 10 years now, and it's completely changed my life.
It's fascinating, and I love how you describe it and the impact it had on you, especially during chemotherapy. I would imagine putting something like that into practice certainly takes practice and takes time. I might just move on to asking you, and I know this all sort of flows in together, but the topic today is sacred esoteric healing. Now, I know this is all going to tie in very nicely for us at the end, but sacred esoteric healing, tell us exactly what that is.
Okay, so let me break it down. The word, and what you were just saying in terms of it all flowing from what I just shared, that's exactly it. The word esoteric means connecting to our innermost, and the innermost is really that inner part of us, our essence that we all have. And sacred is, that means of connecting to that, and healing is returning back to our essence. So in effect, sacred esoteric healing is a modality or a form of healing that allows us to reconnect back to our essence. Right. Because, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's like if we look at it, we feel a newborn baby and we just feel the beauty of them and we feel them in their essence. And then, as we start to get older, we take on, different things. We take on ways of being, we take on movements, we take on, you know, hurts, all sorts of different things. And then we start to act, I guess, in a way that's out of our essence. So what Sacred Esoteric Healing does is helps support us to come back to our essence. And in our essence, our issues and our ailments and all those sorts of things, they start to to alleviate, really.
So if I was to come to you to undertake some esoteric healing, what would that involve?
Yeah, so it's a gentle hands-on technique. So the client remains fully clothed on a massage table, and usually encompasses using some warm eye pillows on different areas of the body, and then making sure the client's fully comfortable and warm. And then it's just applying gentle hands-on techniques to the body, into different areas of the body where you can feel that there's certain blockages of energy there in the body. And through the practitioner, and as an esoteric therapies practitioner, there's a certain way, I guess, of living in that we live in a way that allows for us to be, I guess, a clear vessel so that the healing can take place. So, it's important for me in terms of how I live and my diet and lifestyle, all of that, because in effect, the person is doing their own healing. You're just acting as a vessel to allow that person to come to their own healing.
Right, okay. So someone comes to see you, very hands-on technique. What sort of outcomes would they achieve out of, these types of sessions?
Yeah, so often the sessions start with talking, and people come for all sorts of different things. And obviously I work quite a lot with women going through breast cancer and various forms of cancer, having been through that myself. So yeah, usually starts with talking, and often the talking just allows for whatever's been held. So say, for instance, someone has been going, as we know, when you go through breast cancer, there's a lot of emotions that come up. It's huge getting a diagnosis, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of shock usually in the body. So even just talking about that to start with can help release that shock and trauma that's held in the body, and then going onto the table and placing, hands on, helps to release whatever's been held there in the body, whether, sometimes it's deep sadness, grief, shock, trauma. And then also supporting, I support women a lot who, might be going through chemotherapy or radiation. As we know, the body takes quite a toll from the effects of those particular treatments. So in no way is it in place of those. It works absolutely in line with conventional medicine, but helps support the body, with energy levels. The organs such as the kidneys and the liver really get quite a hammering with chemo and radiation. So it's really helping those organs, or supporting those organs, to rebalance, whilst not having an effect at all on the chemotherapy. The chemotherapy absolutely does its thing. It's just helping the body rebalance, in those areas, I guess, where there's been a drain on the normal functioning of the body.
Sure. And so obviously this is something that women and others can do whilst they're going through this treatment, obviously whilst they're going through a chemotherapy or a radiotherapy or hormone treatment or all of the above. This sacred esoteric healing is something that can be done throughout that, and is actually very beneficial throughout those phases of treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes I have women who come who have just been diagnosed, women who are in the middle of their treatment, or even women, often people contact me and they may have been through the whole treatment or even a couple of years after their cancer, and they're just wanting to understand a little bit more in terms of how they've been through their treatment, or they might still be feeling the grief and the sadness and the shock. So people come at various points, but through treatment, it's so supportive, and the assisting the body to help heal is really important.
Yeah, I mean that's a really important point there about assisting the body to help heal. I mean, often during those treatments as well, you do feel quite helpless. There's not a lot you can do. And even with other support services and other movement practices and things that you do, you often can't do them until after treatment. But it's really reassuring to hear that there are some things you can do during treatment, and this is one of those. And I loved hearing from you about how it can increase or certainly improve your energy levels, support your organs to rebalance, and then that key thing again, which was helping you heal. I mean, to me, that all sounds fantastic. So, why wouldn't you do it? I think is the question at the end of it. I mean, surely it can only be of benefit.
And the thing is with it too, and that's, I guess, what I discovered is what you learn in the sessions, if you're going through treatment, it's not like you finish it at the end of your chemo or your radiation, like the tools and the techniques, I guess, that I work with women to help them to reconnect, which ultimately is what the treatment's all about, is helping you to reconnect back to your body so the body can do its healing. You take all those tools with you into moving forward. People often sort of say, oh, I want to just get straight back to my life of how it was before cancer. And what I often share with people is go, well, wouldn't it be better if you approach life after cancer with a little bit more wisdom in that going, okay, so maybe how I'd been living wasn't so nurturing for myself. And perhaps after cancer, I can move forward in a way where I'm going to be much, much more nurturing for myself, really look after myself. And in that, I then produce a particular quality and way of being that feels really lovely for myself. And then in that, when I'm really supporting me, I can then also support my family or my friends or in my work. So it's looking after yourself first. Yeah. So that you can then fully look after and support others.
Yeah. As women, obviously, we have families and children and all sorts of things, and it's most of the time it's other people first, but it is impossible to look after other people and give them the best version of yourself unless you have fully, as you say, nurtured yourself and looked after yourself first.
Absolutely. And that's, super important for women who are going through treatment and going through breast cancer to actually take it as a full stop moment to go, okay, this is time for me. I really need to look after myself through this. And then at the end of it all, not to just go back to the old habits, but to go, I'm going to still keep putting myself first.
Yeah.
And knowing that when you put yourself first, you're actually in a much better place then to support family, friends, work, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the very first podcasts I did was all about prioritizing your well-being, and we spoke a lot about that and about, it really not being selfish to put yourself first, but when you put yourself first,
Exactly.
You are the best version of yourself to give to everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to come back and ask you about something you mentioned earlier, and that is you mentioned when you went through your breast cancer, you realized, you were leading a fairly healthy lifestyle, and you realized it was not what you were doing, but how. And I sort of wanted to get back to that and sort of get a bit more of an understanding of that and what that means in the context of yourself and your experience.
Sure. So as an example, I was teaching yoga for about 5 years before my diagnosis, and everyone sort of thinks you're cool and calm because that's what you present.
Because you're a yogi.
Yeah, exactly. But and it was interesting because I worked in corporate before I became a yoga teacher, and that was my whole thing. Was as soon as I became a yoga teacher, all of a sudden I put on this persona of being a cool, calm, collected person. But really, on the inside, nothing had really changed. Right. I still had that same level of anxiousness that was inside, but I didn't realize it because I changed my environment. So I was now a yoga teacher. I didn't have the stresses what I had in corporate life. But really that underlying stress was still there inside of me. So, I guess what I'd realised and what I'd come to through the breast cancer and also through the sacred esoteric healing and the esoteric therapies was to understand that actually it doesn't matter, what it is that we do. If you're not doing it in a way where you're really connected with yourself, where you come to a quality of being gentle and self-loving, and really being with your body, so not just always in your mind where you're kind of rushing ahead and thinking of the next thing, because when we're in our minds, we're always moving forward, and our body's in one place, and then our mind's rushing ahead to the next thing that we're doing. And in that, there's a gap, and that gap is an anxiousness, or it's a quality that creates disharmony in the body. So when we actually choose for our mind to be with our body, so actively choosing, okay, in this moment I'm walking, so I'm going to feel my feet as I walk. As I stand up and sit down, I'm going to be with my body as I do that. And then to add in a quality of being gentle with it, it brings what's called conscious presence. So the mind being with the body in what you're doing. And then that gap that I was talking about before, where the mind's ahead and the body's back here, that gap closes. And then the more you choose to live that way, in choosing in every moment, in every action that you do, in every movement, the mind being with the body, it creates a balance, and the body allows itself almost to, it returns back to homeostasis, it returns back to its natural state of harmony. So, making that a priority, not just, that 10 minutes of meditation or half an hour of yoga practice, but okay, how can I bring that into my day-to-day life in everything that I do?
Yeah. So I suppose that's the $1 million question. Is everything you're saying there, makes complete sense. It's how we do it, and how do you prioritize doing that for yourself to make it happen, I suppose.
Yep. So what I share with people is that it takes dedication
Yeah.
and it takes time and practice, but it's well worth it. So what I say to people is start with just a couple of simple things, like an activity that you do every single day, such as standing up and sitting down, or opening and closing doors, and go, okay, that one activity, I'm going to choose to be gentle with myself in how I do that. So, we might stand up, sit down numerous times, 50 times a day, maybe more. So every time you go to stand up, actually choosing, I'm going to do that in a quality of being gentle with myself. And then, the first day you might do okay with it, and then the second, third day you might forget. But then you come back and you go, okay, no, I'm going to try. And it's just committing to doing that one activity in the quality of gentleness. And then when that starts to become ingrained and you go, yeah, okay, I've got that one down pat, then you add something else in, and it might be, okay, each time I walk to the bathroom, I'm going to be really with myself. I'm going to feel my feet on the ground. I'm going to feel my shoulders, my hips, how they move, and I'm going to walk in a quality of gentleness. And then you master that, and then you move on to the next one, and then little bit by little bit, you start to add more things in. And of course, it takes time, and I would say it kind of took me maybe a year or so to master being able to stand up and sit down in gentleness.
Yeah.
But after sort of the first year of really working with it, then you start to feel the loveliness of it, and you go, well, why would I want any other way? Because this feels really, really lovely. And you feel yourself, it's like you're giving yourself a hug from inside all the time. And then you start to feel, you go, oh, well, why would I want to go back to that anxiousness and that rushed way of being of how I was before, because this feels so lovely. And then that almost offers you the, the incentive to keep going with it.
Yeah.
And then, but by no means I've mastered it. It's, it's a work in progress all the time. But for me, it's been an absolute priority. And by choosing to do that, it's completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And that's why I have more energy than I've ever had before, because I'm now choosing to be with my body and being connected in all that I do. And it just feels, very, very different. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, look, I find it fascinating. And I think I hear you speak about it and think, man, I'd love to be able to do that. I would love, because we're all in our head, we're all in our mind all the time. We all know we need to be more with our body, and we need to be much more mindful and so on. And we know the feeling of the very small times when we are like that, how it makes us feel. To work towards that feeling all the time, to me, that sounds wonderful. As you say, certainly takes a lot of practice, but there's certainly some little hints and tips in there for our listeners that they can start with on their day. Start to learn how to do that.
Absolutely. And, I always say that if someone's a woman's going through treatment such as chemo or radiation, don't wait until you finish treatment. Start now.
Absolutely.
Because, your body will really thank you for it. Because the more we connect and the more we choose that quality of gentleness of being with ourselves, then it's like our body feeds us back and goes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what better time to start than now when you're going through treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. And Donna, you mentioned that when you were diagnosed with breast cancer as well, you really sort of dug deep into finding an understanding of, I suppose, how that had happened to you. What sort of realization did you come to?
Yeah, and it took a few years to get there, and I think it continued to unfold as well. It's, I guess I looked in different areas, but what it really was for me, and what I can say in hindsight now, is really understanding that I was living in disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it was about the quality in how I was living was not in connection. So it was always that I wasn't at all self-nurturing, although I did all the things that ticked the boxes. I wasn't truly looking after myself, because the quality in how I did things was always in a rushed way or anxiousness or putting others first. So, for me, I can really understand now that the way I'd been living had actually led to the breast cancer. So, it's been really interesting, and that's, I guess, why, I place so much emphasis of really choosing to put quality first than anything else. As well as making me feel so much better.
Yeah.
That I really, really understand that self-nurturing is so, so key, and that I hadn't really self-nurtured, although I thought I had. And for me, I really understand that, that lack of self-nurturing had led to the breast cancer.
That's really interesting. Self-nurturing is something in general as humans, I don't think we do very well at all. I don't think any of us do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, often it takes something like a cancer diagnosis or an accident, or for us to kind of go, oh, okay, what's really going on? How have I been? How have I been living? They're like those wake up calls for us.
Yes. Well, that it certainly happens, doesn't it? Where you get the diagnosis and instantly start assessing everything in your life. What have I done? What haven't I done? What could I have done better? And you certainly start questioning all these things, and everybody does it. And, I know everybody comes to different conclusions, and that's obviously fine. But it's really interesting to hear your take on that and where you got to, and then where it has taken you since that time, again, almost 10 years down the track, and to hear how how much of a positive impact getting back into connection with your body has had on you. It's look, I really find it quite fascinating. It's been very interesting to hear, and look, I really hope our listeners have as well. And there's been lots of things that they can take away, little tidbits to do themselves. If somebody wanted to do some work with you in that sacred esoteric healing space, where would they go to work with you?
Yeah, I'm based in Sydney,
Okay.
So I do sessions in North Sydney at a clinic in North Sydney. I also do counselling sessions via Skype as well, for listeners who may be in other areas. But there are sacred esoteric healing practitioners all across Australia, actually across the world. So, if anybody was looking for someone and they didn't live in Sydney, I can certainly point them in the right direction. And if you wanted to get in touch with me, you could send me an email, and my email address is donna@yogaandhealing.com.au.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I'll pop up on our show notes as well your email address, and I'll pop a link to your website and Facebook. So if anybody is interested, they can get in touch with you. But yeah, look, if anybody is interested in getting involved, definitely see Donna if you're in Sydney, or those Skype sessions. I didn't know that you did those, but that's also fantastic for our listeners that aren't in Sydney. And as Donna mentioned, there are others out there right around Australia and the world if you're interested in getting involved in the practice. And, it's a fascinating insight into something that is probably relatively unknown, I would say, especially, probably in the cancer circle, for the benefits it can bring. So thank you so much for sharing with us your story and your knowledge on this topic today, Donna. It's been a real pleasure talking to you on the podcast. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really awesome to be here, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Pink Movement podcast. For episode notes, links and downloads, head to thepinkmovement.com.au. Like what you're hearing? Join our Facebook page, subscribe through iTunes, and while you're there, provide a quick review. Want to help out? You can support the ongoing production of this podcast by becoming a patron. Find all the details on the website. The Pink Movement Podcast, helping you to stress less, move more, and feel better.